It all started down in the mud.
You have dandruff.
Ever since Lindsay Vinegar was 4 years old, she has shown hogs in competition.
Can I touch him?
Oh
my God.
You're gonna have a finger.
She won $300 in her first year.
What's a 4-year-old gonna do with the money? I put it in the bank.
Right off the bat, Lindsay was in hog heaven.
So what else makes them prize-winning hogs?
They don't want them flabby. They want them kind of, not muscly, but they want them kind of in between, just solid.
Her experience raising hogs paid off. She kept winning and kept saving. She didn't spend any of her prize money until she splurged at 13.
I bought my first Coach purse.
But the rest of her cash?
All of that would go into the bank.
And straight into investments where it earned interest, or a fee the bank paid Lindsay based on a percentage of her balance. At 18, she was ready to splurge again, but this time she thought big. Do you know any other 18-year-olds that own homes?
No, I do not.
How much did it cost you?
It cost $40,000.
Lindsay bought this entire house with her savings.
So do you want to go check it out?
Yes, definitely.
Because she was still living with her parents, she essentially turned her new house into a business by renting it to her aunt and uncle. And now she earns $450 a month.
So this is the dining room, the living room, the bedroom, laundry room. Last but not least, this is the good living room.
And what does good living room mean?
It means that nobody's really supposed to be in here.
Before anyone could move in, Lindsay had to fix up the house. She spent $2,000 on new floors and toilets.
So here's one of the bathrooms with the new toilet.
What was it like shopping for new toilets?
I didn't realize there was that many. It was definitely a new experience.
Yeah, I've never done it.
Yeah.
How much do they cost?
Well, to install 2, it was $400.
All right, well, let's hope these things work.
Unlike Lindsay, many Americans flush money down the toilet. So I asked her for some tips on how to save up. Tip number 1, skip the shopping.
What are some things that you've wanted to buy along the way and you've resisted the temptation?
I've always wanted a pair of the Heart signature Tiffany earrings. Never have I bought those. An Ugg boot in every color. This Coach raincoat that has been in this outlet mall forever, and I've never bought it.
Tip number 2, stay out of debt.
It makes me a nervous wreck to even think about debt.
Tip number 3, only use credit cards if you can pay the whole bill every month.
Credit cards are really something that I've never been taught to use unless I knew that I had the money in an envelope waiting for the invoice to come in so that I could pay it.
Tip number 4, invest your money so that it grows over time.
If it's not directly in front of you, then it's never really there. You kind of just forget about it until it doubles and triples, and then eventually you have $40,000.
At 19, Lindsay is done showing her hogs in competition, but her smart saving habits are still paying off. She recently bought a second house and is using the rent from her first house to help pay for it.
Yeah, I'm blown away that just by raising these animals, you've been able to buy yourself a house.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy to think about.
Shelby Holiday, Channel 1 News.
This is kind of like a high school, Super Bowl of jazz.
It's called the Essentially Ellington High School Jazz Band Competition, where some of the country's top high school jazz bands duke it out on the biggest stage of their lives, at the famous Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York City. The contest was set up to celebrate what many consider to be America's greatest contribution to music, jazz.
Jazz is actually American classical music. The people who created jazz are geniuses.
The contest is named after one of the greatest jazz geniuses of all time, Duke Ellington. In honor of the legendary composer and bandleader, each band plays songs by Duke. The founder of the competition is Wynton Marsalis, a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer and one of the world's top trumpet players. I had the chance to catch up with Marsalis, who also serves as a contest judge. Why Duke Ellington?
He's our greatest composer, greatest American composer, and he was just deeply, deeply soulful and cool.
He was cool.
He's the essence of cool.
Making it to this stage isn't easy. Almost 100 bands from around the country submitted tapes, but just 15 made the cut. Kelly's band from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, tried for 11 years before it finally got word it had been accepted.
And our band director, Mr. Engel, you could tell he was on the verge of tears, and there were a couple of people crying, and it was the best moment.
Yeah.
And in Florida, it was big news when students at Dillard Center for the Performing Arts made the cut.
Who would have thought that Dillard, little Dillard, would make it into this big competition? Is like amazing.
The entire community helped raise the $30,000 the band needed to come to New York City.
Even holding a garage sale at the swap shop, among other things.
And Seattle's Garfield High School was back to defend its title. In order to qualify for Essentially Ellington, bands don't just need to play the notes right. They need to get the feeling right, and that is hard to do.
It's like any of us can read. If we had to read the Gettysburg Address, okay, we could read it, we could read the notes. But if someone told us, now you have to read it with the feeling of Martin Luther King, or you have to read it with the intention Lincoln had, now all of a sudden it becomes something very different.
All right, so we're backstage and we're about to find out which band can carry it off. Before students perform, they watch the competition on a TV monitor, make final adjustments to their instruments, and get revved up.
So where you at? House to sway! What you come to do? Sway!
Is it going to be Dillard, the band who got to New York after everyone in town pitched in to help pay for their trip? Or is it going to be the defending champs Garfield? Or the band that finally made it after 11 years, Wauwatosa? We'll see. It's showtime! You never would have known it was Dillard's first time. They blew everyone away, even their competition.
The Dillard School was very clean, and they swung pretty hard.
Riley's band, Garfield High School from Seattle, has won the competition 3 times. And as usual, they came out swinging. And then there was Wauwatosa, who rocked the house.
I think our performance went great. It was the best we've ever played, and the solos were great. I just can't stop smiling.
After all the bands played, the judges went to debate which band was best. And what does it mean if you win Essentially Ellington? Are you the best band in the country?
It means that you're certainly one of them.
So we're looking for the modern day New Orleans Saints?
Uh-oh, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a dark horse to come out of nowhere.
And they found it. Although the band didn't win, they came pretty close.
Second place was the Dillard Center for the Arts, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We are just elated. It's one of the most exciting things that have happened in any of our lives.
For some bands, the biggest prize was finally making it to New York. Wauwatosa didn't make it to the top 3, but that didn't get them down. So who was the big winner?
First place was the Garfield High School, Seattle, Washington.
I caught up with Riley, the Garfield trumpeter, after the competition. So is this the best day of your life?
It's up there, winning Essentially Ellington. It's pretty amazing.
Shelby Holiday, Channel 1 News.
Habiba Bakir's doing something few Egyptians have ever done before, volunteering for a presidential campaign.
Campaigning for a presidential candidate is something new and exciting. Going down in the streets and supporting a person and telling people to vote for him is something new for all the youth in Egypt.
Campaigning is new in Egypt because the country's previous president, Hosni Mubarak, had a lock on power for 30 years.
The elections were fraud. We knew before the results that Mubarak will win over and over again.
And while Mubarak squandered billions of dollars on palaces and the military during his presidency, 2 out of every 5 Egyptians was living on $2 a day or less. The people were fed up. So last year, more than 1 million Egyptians, like Ahmed Amin, protested in Cairo's Tahrir Square. They wanted Mubarak out.
When we were protesting in Tahrir, I'd say that the basic and most simple demands were bread, freedom, and social justice.
Those Egyptian protests were a crucial part of the Arab Spring uprising. That's when people in Arab countries stood up to their leaders demanding a true democracy. The people of Libya, Tunisia, Yemen, and Egypt were successful in toppling regimes that had held on to power for decades. Mubarak resigned in February of 2011 and is now being tried for the deaths of some of the 840 protesters who were killed during the revolution. With Mubarak finally gone, Egyptians were elated and hoped their lives would finally start improving. But change was put on hold when Egypt's military took over. The generals promised to hold elections and write up a new constitution within 6 months, but nothing happened.
People started to become impatient with the military regime. The protests started, and then week by week they started to get more serious until the military eventually started to respond with brutality.
Under growing pressure from protesters and from the international community, the military allowed elections for parliament almost 10 months after taking over. Egyptians turned out in huge numbers.
It feels really good to experience democracy for the first time and to feel that your vote really counts. It's an experience that no one should live without.
Unlike past votes in Egypt, the parliamentary election was seen as free and fair. Yet the outcome may not have been what Tahrir protesters had in mind. That revolution was led mostly by young people, like Ahmed, who weren't looking to have a religious group in power that might pass laws based on religion. But members of a group of religious conservatives known as the Muslim Brotherhood won the largest block of seats, about 47%. Tomorrow, 15 months after Egypt's military took power, the country's two-day presidential election gets underway. One of the leading candidates worked in Mubarak's government. Others have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Earlier this month, the two frontrunners, one of whom Habiba supports, took part in the Arab world's first televised presidential debate. But Ahmed is concerned. He says the military broke its promise of having a new constitution before the elections.
That's scary because we're voting for a president based on the old laws of which Mubarak came into power and of which Mubarak constantly re-elected himself term after term.
Habiba and Ahmed could have had their own debate about what they think the outcome of the elections will be.
In the past regime, there were a lot of fraud in the elections and in the results. But I don't think that this election will be a fraud because there's a new system.
I don't think that democracy would be able to thrive in Egypt in the immediate future. I believe that nothing is actually going to change and that we are going to be stuck within a military junta the same way we have been for the past 7,000 years.